friends, and welcome. Today I hit mapping on the early access version of Path of Exile 2. For my first ever Path of Exile video, I thought I would just share my build and get your guys' thoughts on maybe what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. A little background on myself. My gaming accolades, so to speak, are as follows. I have none. However, I have considerable experience with lots of games. Given that, I'm no stranger to action RPGs. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I completed the campaign portion of PoE 2 recently, and have begun to dig into the Atlas system and mapping. I wanted to take a break from playing to post an update on my build progress. I always tend to lean heavily into melee in these games, so naturally I chose to start with Warrior. I stuck with the two-handed mace throughout the entire campaign. I haven't experimented with the one-handed weapons and shields, or dual wielding. Something tells me perhaps sword and board type setup might make starting out much easier. Regardless, I stacked physical damage, tried to get attack speed. About midway through the campaign, a +4 to melee skills dropped, and it's still my best weapon. Most armor early on, I just focused on stacking life and resistance. I'm even still rocking a magic helmet I need to either craft on or just find a replacement. One thing to mention is Spirit can roll on armor and jewelry, and allows you to maintain auras. A lot of the upgrades I found along the way were gambling random items from the NPC in town. It seems to be every 4 or 5 items is rare. I don't want to get into the weeds too far, because I have some ideas for future videos, but check the magic items you gamble, because if it has a good mod on it, you can add another mod via crafting orbs. If it then rolls another good mod, it's probably worth hitting it with the regal orb that transfers that magic item to rare. Crafting is essentially gambling, with sometimes godly outcomes. Okay, so you got a peek at the gear I've scraped together. Let's look at the passive tree. I went into the early access completely blind. This is not an overstatement. The only information I had was when, where, and how much to get in. It might be worth mentioning I'm playing on a PS5. When I opened the passive tree and started pathing, I didn't have a clear vision of what nodes I needed to take to amplify my build and my skills and defenses. Honestly, I'm still very shaky on what passives are crucial for my build. Defensively, this build is very lacking, and I need more time to study the tree. Now that I've finished the campaign, I'm open to researching and taking a look at what other players are doing. The long short of the passive tree is I stack as much attack speed and physical damage as possible. I take all the fire nodes I can find in the nearby nodes. It's also worth mentioning I take a lot of stun. While I'm sure my endgame passive setup will look drastically different, this setup was serviceable to get me through the early endgame. The skills are pretty straightforward. It's worth mentioning the jeweler's orbs are pretty rare. In my playthrough I found 3. 2 lesser, 1 greater. So be very picky when upgrading the amounts of sockets your skills have. There are many considerations to keep in mind. If you add sockets and more supports too soon, you might become mana starved. Also, whichever skill you upgrade with the lesser orb will likely be the skill you upgrade again if you get a greater orb to drop, so choose wisely. In my case, I upgraded mostly Sunder. Sunder seemed to be the most reliable skill to fish for Boneshatter hits. Boneshatter is so good, I ran with it with no supports for quite a while, and it was still the best mob killing skill I had. The setup can be a bit tedious, but from what I've experienced, the combat feels a bit more nuanced than previously, so some setup doesn't feel out of place. Let's go over each skill in rotation very quickly. Mace Strike. Being a quick attack, I stack stun buildup on this skill with a bit of lifesteal. Mace Strike is also really good for proccing Boneshatter. Ancestral Totem. Never really used the totem. I'm sure there's some godly skill to use here, I just didn't experiment enough to find a good one. One aura I'm using is Overwhelming Presence. In a nutshell, more stun buildup on affected enemies. Infernal Cry is good for boosting both single target hits and gives a nice AoE explosion on death. Boneshatter. This is the skill that basically carried me through the game. Once an enemy is nearly stunned, you can use Boneshatter to heavy stun the assailant and deal huge AoE explosions. Hammer of the Gods seems really good. Haven't had a chance to explore its potential? If it's possible to get around the cooldown and spam hammers, it can be crazy powerful. Another aura I used from early on was Herald of Ash. so I'm consistently getting huge AoE explosions with Boneshatter, overkilling and igniting nearby enemies. I paired Vitality and Precision with Herald of Ash for more life and accuracy. Leap Slam. Not quite what I had hoped in terms of mobility, but what it lacks there it makes up for in damage and positioning. It's also a decent way to fish for bone shatters. I added rage support, momentum, and heft once I got it. Perfect Strike is my single target solution. I consistently erased bosses with ease, never even added a socket, it was so good. I paired Perfect Strike with Window of Opportunity and Fire Infusion support gems. Last but not least, we come to Sunder. Sunder has really come online toward the end of the campaign. It's the safest and most reliable way of prepping enemies for Boneshatter that I came across. I paired Sunder with Martial Tempo for speed, Long Shot for distant enemies, Concentration Effect for damage, and Upheaval. I feel like I basically have a skill for any situation, which is refreshing. Some skills I definitely get more mileage out of than others. I focus most of my effort on using a combination of Leap, Sunder, to proc Boneshatter. That takes care of most of the mobs. For bosses, I use a combination of Infernal Cry, Hammer of the Gods, and Perfect Strike to melt bosses' HP to nothing. Okay, that's my short overview of my melee build. Please let me know if I'm a complete idiot and I'm missing something crucial. My new goal with the channel is to post PoE 2 content every day. With a game with so many deep layers of complexity, there's plenty of potential. That's it for this video. Have fun and stay safe, my friends.